Hello, builders. It is a privilege to welcome you to this episode of the Build Your Success podcast. Here at the Build Your Success podcast, we like to build you so you can build others. We do that through our coaching, training, and speaking events, but we also do that through special guests that we bring to you, our audience. And I am excited today to have Richard Yeargin with us, friend of mine. We've done some training together, and he's a speaker. He's done a lot of stuff. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Richard. He's a highly sought after transformational keynote speaker who uses his life experience and powerful storytelling to inspire his audience. Richard is no stranger to overcoming adversity, as he had to overcome being a supreme athlete to enduring a critical car accident that had broken his neck and given him a concussion. This traumatic event temporarily stripped Richard of his mobility and changed the trajectory of his college career. Wow, Richard, what a thing to overcome. Welcome to the podcast.
Man, Brian, thank you for having me. I'm honored and it's a privilege.
And I have seen your photos of you as a premier athlete, man. You was a star. And then this life traumatizing event changes your trajectory. So we're going to have some conversation around that. But before we do, I want to ask you the question we ask all of our guests. What does leadership and being a leader mean to Richard Yeargin?
So it's funny you ask. I sat down and I really thought about that over the past 3 years, right, throughout my journey. And, the one thing that constantly stands out to me is service. And so I would define leadership to me as servant leadership. And so it's not about standing still. It's about constantly growing, right? Adapting, evolving. And if you're growing, or if you're not growing, something's wrong, right? And basically, it's always a progressive forward mindset to see, like, what is the worst case scenario right now, right? Like, what is the worst case scenario? And then providing a meaningful way to shift to obstacle to thinking opportunity. That's what leadership really is to me.
Oh, I love that. What I'm hearing is overcoming obstacle and turning obstacle into opportunity. What a great outlook. What a great mindset to keep. So you are known for helping people understand their why and developing their gifts. So tell us how you do that, number one, and then why you do that, because I know it's very important, the purpose behind that.
Absolutely. So let's start with why, right? Simon said it. I think a lot of times when we're going through situations, whether it's adversity, opposition, things going on in your life, it's hard for you to identify what's holding you back, right? But in order to identify the what, you have to ask the question of why. And so for me, on June 3rd, 2017, when I broke my neck, I had a lot of questions. But I didn't get a lot of answers back. But the way in which I sought those answers was through taking massive action. So as leaders, right, why creates the what, which leads to you taking massive action on whatever it is that you need to do in order to move the needle for your bottom line, right? So for me, my bottom line is taking one person at a time, one encounter at a time, and saving one person at a time. I can't save the whole world today, right? So my mentality is just one at a time, right? Just one session at a time, one speech at a time, one opportunity at a time, and stewarding that so well with my gift that everything that I touch is with a spirit of excellence. And so everyone that I come in contact with and that I leave, they take something from me that I gave them willingly, knowingly. Okay, I'm not asking for anything back in return, right? Like being a lender and not a borrower. So my mentality is always, you connect your why with your gifts, you begin to understand your purpose.
So important to connect those two together. And then when you talk about the one person at a time, I love that. In fact, I use some little stress bricks in my training where I tell people that these bricks either represent your team, which is individuals that build up a wall, or actions that build up a wall, because that's what we're doing. We're building things in life. We're building careers, building businesses, transforming lives, but creating things. But it takes, a brick by itself is a paperweight, but a bunch of bricks put together and interconnected create a wall, and walls create buildings. And if we can just inspire people to understand and get that's amazing. And the whole connection piece, you and I are connected. So I'm better because of that. And
Absolutely.
if I can find more people to connect with and relate with and understand how much more power could we have in the world if we were striving together for a common effort.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree.
So, you decided at this turning point in your life to lead others. You talked about a servant leadership. Tell us what you're doing today to inspire and help others.
Absolutely. So, I'm in a place in a space in my life where the doors that were open for me, I'm opening them for others, right? As a professor here at the university, Clemson welcomed me back last year with an opportunity to serve as a lecturer in the College of Education's Athletic Leadership and Organizational Development program. At the master's level and undergraduate level, I teach predominantly dealing with student athletes or former student athletes or aspiring coaches, teachers, administrators, just kind of getting them equipped with the mindset and kind of the tools that they'll need to transition, right? Because a lot of it is internal work. So I'm blessed to be in the position that I'm in that space, in that regards. And now I'm taking on the task of becoming a PhD student starting this fall. I'll be beginning in the educational leadership doctoral program here at Clemson University, also in the College of Education. And obviously, I've just been out on the circuit speaking, whether that's corporate, whether that's in schools, and really just promoting, my brand and my curriculum for, P through really college, right? It's a curriculum based around NIL, name, image, and likeness, which is what my research consists of because of my background extensively in coaching and teaching and, all the things that I've done throughout the tenure of, my time here at Clemson and outside of Clemson. That's just opened a ton of doors for me, right? The Paul has served me well in a lot of aspects, but at the end of the day, my character and my reputation preceded me before I entered the room. And that was developed, really through football and through the experiences that I gained and the transferable life skills and things. So those are the things that I give and I pour on a daily basis. And I'm happy to give from that place in that space because I've walked that walk and I'm now back and everything comes back around full circle, right? So, now as an accomplished author, just having published my first book, The Man is Greater Than the Brand, as you can see, that supports my research. That is my curriculum. Very excited to, continue to grow my family, and do all the other things, the other titles as a husband and as a father, just representing them in the best way possible. So, that's my life.
Wow, you've done some amazing things. And when you think about some people experience a tragedy like you did, and they just give up. They're okay. Well, I've lost my dream. I've lost my hopes. And you said, you know what? Just because I am not able to do what I plan to do, I still have things I can do. In fact, I interviewed a lady by the name of Jessica Cox, who was born with no arms, and yet she flies an airplane. And she told me that disability is not inability.
Mm,
And boy, that has just resonated with me, that a lot of people have disabilities, but they're not necessarily inabilities. And if we can recognize we have something to give, regardless of our condition, regardless of where we came from in life, there's something we can do to help others.
absolutely. That reminds me of my thought process, always thinking about the three C's, right? Your condition internally and your circumstances externally do not have to be your conclusion. And,
Ooh,
that has to do with, basically this notion of the only disability in life is a bad attitude, right? Because it all starts with perspective in the mind. As a man thinketh, so is he. So I think a lot of times, again, it's that internal versus external conflict that you have with self that stops you from getting to that conclusion. And you have to identify what that is.
all right, Richard. For the listeners, you have to say that again about the only disability is. Say that again for us.
So the only disability in life is a bad attitude, because
Mm.
that enables and cripples your mindset. So as a man thinketh, so is he, right? Because out of the mind comes the words, right? And it comes from the heart. So the heart's connected to the mind, which then tells the mouth what to say. So if you're saying something negative or bad about yourself, then others are going to get tired of being led by you because you're not feeding them. So as a leader, people will get sick of being led by people they're not fed by, right? So you have to give them substance, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that belief system and the attitude are so important. I mean, what you tell yourself becomes your reality. What you tell yourself becomes your truth. And you know, I'm not one of these guys that's name it and claim it or blab it and grab it, that kind of stuff. But as far as setting out a course and a plan of action and taking action to meet those objectives, you can do many things. You can't do anything you want to do, of course, because you know some things are impossible. But the things that you can literally physically do that you're capable of, the sky is unlimited when it comes to those items.
Absolutely.
So you filled
Absolutely.
out an application to become a guest on the podcast. Those that are listening, that's how we do this. Our guests fill out an application, helps me better understand them, make sure they're a fit for the podcast. So you can do that. Go to buildcs.net, fill out our application, and we'll consider you to be a guest. But Richard said here, in our modern society, there is something we are told to elevate above all else, our brand. No matter where you're at in your career, your brand can either make you or break you. And he says, let me help you. So brand is something you're working on in education. You've written a book about it. How important is your brand of being a leader and being successful in life?
Well, I think a lot of times as a leader, right? I was using this analogy earlier in a lecture I was giving this morning. You want people to see the tip of your iceberg, right? And that's your brand. But underneath you, the iceberg, right, is that frozen process of the work that it took for people to see that progress, that I'm in a leadership position. I have this title, I do this, I do that. But don't forget, right, those long nights, those moments where you wanted to quit, those moments where you wanted to give up, because that's where leading with empathy and leading from a place of meeting people where they're at helps elevate and bring other people up to your level. And then you all feel like you're together as opposed to you're alone and you're the lone wolf and everybody else reports to you. So that's kind of, you know, the mentality as a leader that I'm displaying there when I'm talking about building my brand versus, you know, building up who I am internally. So that internal versus external, you know, type of mindset.
Richard, I love that. And when I hear you talk about that, I think of, you know, we're encouraged to be authentic in this world and recognize I have struggled, man. There's been times I've wanted to quit this podcast because I didn't think enough people were listening to it. There's been
Right.
times I wanted to quit coaching and training because I couldn't get clients for a month. And it just, you have to step back and say, no, why am I doing this? It's back to that purpose and passion, and remind yourself why you're doing it. And that will give you the full fuel you need to go forward. But it's not easy. I mean, let's not let, you know, the bottom of the iceberg is heavy. It's thick. It's hard, man. And people need to, you know, like you said, people see the tip of the iceberg. That's what they see, the success, but they don't understand what's going on to get people there. And it's hard work.
Commitment, the commitment to the sacrifices that it took to get to the point where you look like a saint. You look like, oh my God, this guy, he's packaged up and ready. It's like, nah, man, you ain't see all that other stuff that, you know, that made him say, I can't stop here, right? Like the floor and the ceiling are two different perspectives, right? Like my ceiling will be my children's floor for them to launch off of. So that's what keeps me up at night, the fear of not meeting that standard.
Yeah, I often, you know, when I'm going to do a keynote speech or go speak to a group of companies, you know, the guy that's dressed up, looks as sharp as he can, works hard to, you know, look professional. That same guy got up that morning, kind of hobbled to the bathroom, had to comb his hair, had bad breath. You know, look at that person in the mirror and go, "You're going to speak to people," but that's what you have to understand is there's a backstory to all this stuff, and we need to be conscious and aware of that. You know what? Yes, I can perform and I can do a good job. I just got to put my mind to it and create the actions that bring that to pass.
Absolutely. I mean, John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Remove the lid, the law of the lid, right? As a leader, you are the lid. So if you're capsizing people and you're not allowing them to take in the full capacity of what they could potentially be, then you're stunting other people's growth. And then honestly, you're going to marginalize everything for the future, as opposed to being able to capitalize on the future if you would have removed the lid and allowed everyone around you to grow by planting seeds and watering them on a daily basis, as opposed to constantly plucking them up, you know?
Richard, that law is one of my favorite laws, the law of the lid. And John likes to talk about how whatever the leader's lid and the leader's capacity is limits the rest of the team. And as I do more training and coaching towards team building, I realize if the leader can get other people to help them raise the lid, it lessens the load. So typically leaders are all trying to push on the lid themselves. But man, if you could get your team to surround you and put their hands on the lid too, boy, how could we raise things if we have more people doing that?
Standard, raise the standard. Everybody
Yeah.
has
And we need, I often say that my way or the highway is a lonely road. And I've heard people say that leadership is a lonely road, but I'd say it doesn't have to be, man. We can have people come around us and surround us and help us in our leadership to where we don't have to be standing alone.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what are you speaking on today? What's some of your presentations you give to audiences to help inspire them and grow them?
Absolutely. So in regards to the educational space, talking about student success, retention rates, eliminating interpersonal issues and just creating overall better, healthy lifestyle, choices for youth. There's certain topics that I speak on, as well as overcoming obstacles to identifying opportunities, and then in the corporate space, understanding your why, developing your gifts, how to grow past what you go through. So, a lot of companies are evolving and shifting and adapting their models of how they hire, looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion, in some of their hiring methods. And, how do you create overall better work culture? Just hosting workshops on, various different topics, those different things, and just working in the nonprofit spaces, just trying to move the needle, whether that's in education, healthcare issues, societal things going on, social injustice. Those are all things that tickle my fancy, I will say.
That sounds great. Well, I'm going to ask you one final question.
Sir.
What's the number one thing you would suggest to our listeners to develop their gifts? What can they do? What action can they take to develop their own gifts?
Identify who offended you. And so who underestimated you is a better question, right? And or did you underestimate yourself, right? Because you've got it in you. I'm just trying to get it out.
Oh man, I love that. I think that, and I tell this to businesses all the time, that the answers to their problems are within their organization. The frontline workers know what the answers to the problems are. Let's get with them. Let's solve this. We don't have to go outside the organization. The answers are within. And it's the same thing individually and personally. Our answers are within. We have and can answer our questions. We might need a coach. We might need a trainer to pull that out of us, but it's there. We have it internally. Love that. Tell us more about the book. Where can the listeners find the book, and then your website where people can find out more about you?
Absolutely. Thank you for allowing me to share. In regards to the book, basically shedding past brokenness to live as kings and queens. The man is greater than the brand. Acknowledging the fact that we are all kings and queens in some shape, form, or fashion, whether we're married, whether we're divorced, whether we're going through mental health battles, whatever you're going through, remember to still put your crown on. That's your purpose, is to live as a king or as a queen while you're on earth. And identifying why that's important, developing your gifts, finding your purpose, through all of the things that you've gone through. And so if you are interested in that, and really want to take that journey of deep self-evaluation and actualization, you could find the book at richardyeargin.com. Again, Richard Yeargin, YEARGIN.com, and or feel free to email me in regards to any booking opportunities, or if you want to just, one off at my email, bookings@richardyergin.com, and you can also find the book on Amazon. So thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And we'll be sure to include that in the show notes for our listeners. Listeners, I want to remind you of the opportunity that we have to join the Voices for Leadership community. We had a book that came as a result of this podcast and the question we ask about leadership. And then it morphed into a community where we meet once a month. We ask those authors, those amazing leaders, questions. And then we open the floor for Q&A from our members. So it's a once a month coaching call. It's an amazing price point you can get in now. The price will raise once we reach 100 members, and we're up to like 80 members now. So do me a favor, try that out, vflcommunity.com. Join us. One thing, you can try it for free. We would love to have you over there on that monthly event where we do that live with our authors. And you also can have all the archived calls, about 14, 16 months of other calls that you can watch at your leisure. Thanks for listening to the podcast today. Remember to build yourself and build others.